Welcome home. We are WNST, AM 1570, Towson, Baltimore. We call this BaltimorePositive.com. We're going to be out on the road doing the Maryland Crab Cake Tour this Friday. I thoroughly enjoyed my visit with Mark Viviano, as well as Ron Cassie and Luke, as well as some friends we had to tell us about the Maryland Zoo last week. So you'll be hearing all that here this week. On Friday, we will be back at Costas. It'll be my first approach at Costas since we lost Mr. Costas. I'm sort of waiting on that. I was kind of like Jones and Ajito over the weekend, but I laid low up at Cooper's Pub where I had some fish tacos. But on Friday, we will be back at Costas. I will have the Magic 8 Ball scratch-offs to give away. We do have some guests confirmed. I'm working on some other people. I think Bino Ranson's going to come over, talk some college basketball with us this week. I have other college basketball guests this week. I can't tell you how much I miss John Feinstein right now to talk to him, especially after Duke got eliminated. But it is baseball season. Luke and I will get back to all things Justin Tucker and counting Mr. Bisciotti and Mr. Harbaugh's money and all of that. But the baseball team went out to Kansas City, about to head to Arizona. We'll be up late on Monday and Tuesday. There's an afternoon game on Wednesday. And Luke, it's sub 500. It's suboptimal. And the loss of Colton Cowser and who's playing center field and is it time to fire the manager? All that nonsense going on here. You laugh, but these people on the internet, I swear to God, this is why Katie Griggs doesn't like me now. She should hear the version of me that had to take her phone calls. Yeah, this is not the way you want to begin the thing, right, Luke?
No, and look, I mean, I understand people being disappointed. I mean, there's quite a wide range between everything's totally fine, don't worry whatsoever, don't care if they lose some games early, and the sky is falling and you need
Burn
to
it
fire everyone.
down, burn it down.
There are some legitimate criticisms and there are some legitimate things to be concerned about, and there are other things that you just have to look at and say, look, how I felt about this or how a certain fan or how the team felt about a certain area of the club over the course of the offseason shouldn't change that drastically in 10 games, right? Even the Dodgers, the mighty Dodgers are going to lose 6 of 10 at some point this year. May only happen once, may only happen twice, but they'll do it at some point over the course of the year. So we have to remember that. I was interacting with a few folks and reasonable takes, reasonable early season concern, but understanding it's early. And I pointed out, just for a little bit of perspective, Corbin Burns pitched in D.C. on Sunday. He gave up as many runs as Cade Povich gave up in Kansas City, 4. He took the loss. And Anthony Santander, through his first, 10 days now, 11 days, whatever it is, in Toronto, he's batting 194 and is yet to hit a home run. So there were the two big losses, and those guys haven't performed so well so far this year. They will, in the same way that I expect Gunnar Henderson to get on track after a really rough, more so Saturday and Sunday. He had a few balls right on the nose Friday. That was actually one of the few things I liked from Friday's game. But look, they're 4-6. It was a very underwhelming, disappointing series loss in Kansas City. I mean, Saturday was good. Friday was awful. I mean, that was rebuild era kind of baseball they played Friday night, albeit in miserable conditions. But hey, the Royals played in it too, so you can't use that as an excuse. And then on Sunday, you have Jorge Mateo filling in for Cedric Mullins. And look, I would have been inclined to keep Cedric's bat in the lineup with the way that he swung. At the same time, I also recognize that you're not going to have 9 Cal Ripkins in your lineup playing every single day, and you're trying to keep guys fresh. You're trying to keep guys healthy. You're trying to keep your bench players in some semblance of a groove if and when they're called upon to play. So you
You
don't
got
want them
bench
just,
players playing right now too. That's really
well,
going on
sure.
too.
And
Yeah.
really for me, for every, and we'll get into Chris Bubich and the fact that he's a reverse splits guy, because I think that's a really interesting conversation. I've had people ask me that, but specifically with Mateo, here's my thing. For me, if you want to give Cedric Mullins a rest, that's fine. And obviously, we knew going into the season their backup center fielder is Colton Cowser. Go look how many times he filled in for Mullins just against lefties last year, because Mullins struggled so much against left-handed pitching. But this team also signed Ramon Laureano right before, 2 weeks before the start of spring training. And while I would fully acknowledge the metrics and various defensive metrics would suggest that he hasn't been quite as good in center field the last couple years as earlier in his career, and he's not someone you want to trot out there to play center field 6 times a week at this point in his career. But if you don't trust him to play center field and you're instead going with Jorge Mateo, who I think off the top of my head, Nestor, I apologize for not having an exact, but I think he maybe 11 career starts in center field. If you can't trust Laureano to play center field, then
Why is he on the
why'd you
team?
sign him? Why'd
Yeah.
you sign him? Because he's going to have a very limited role. However, on the flip side of that, I also think there's a conversation that maybe isn't had right now because Kowser's out, and I'm not going to feel that strongly about saying, oh, I'd much rather have Dylan Carlson on the major league roster right now. I'd just be lying if I felt that strongly about it. But here's the reality of where they are with Jorge Mateo. We've seen now, for as much as he had the really impressive, what was it, 2022, and go look at his numbers. I mean, he was an above, slightly above average starting shortstop. Was worth a few wins. Great defense, stole bases. We know that. But the last 2 years, the hitting has been much more. He's good for 6 weeks, 7 weeks, 8 weeks, and his offense is pretty non-existent after that. For as much as his defense is heralded, I think you would find as elite as his defense was a few years ago, the metrics would suggest it's probably been a little bit overrated the last couple years. And you're talking about who even last year you'd say, okay, Mateo's your backup shortstop to Gunnar Henderson, but you have Jackson Holliday on this roster now who showed, albeit only for a week, but looked very capable filling in at shortstop, where if something would happen to Gunnar Henderson at this point in time, Jackson Holliday would be your shortstop. So what I'm saying is Mateo has a very, very specialized role off the bench at this point. It's really pinch runner, and you're hoping, okay, he can swing the bat a little bit against lefties, and you're hoping he can fill in the outfield in a pinch. But if he can't do those last two things, and it's really just as a pinch runner, that's not really a long-term justification
Well,
of a
Urias,
roster
we've been
spot.
trying to get rid of Urias as long as we've been trying to get rid of Mountcastle, and they're still in the lineup, and Urias is still making some plays with
And
the
he
glove
hits. Yeah,
that makes you say, well, I remember this is Mateo and Urias, and Henderson was trying to get in, and Westberg wasn't a thing yet, and
right.
they weren't sure whether he's a second baseman or a third baseman, and Holiday, is he a shortstop or a second baseman? Is Henderson a shortstop or a third? I mean, they've had all of that. We've had these conversations the last 3 years
Hmm.
as this thing has matured, right? And here it is matured. It's opening day. Kowser's hurt. Henderson was hurt. Rutschman, we don't know what he is. Holiday, you're kind of hoping. Mullins doesn't hit against left-handers. I mean, this is sort of like, you know, every day sort of Lent. There's a day when you can and you can't, and there's in and out, and we can't do this on this day, and we can't have Batista pitch back. There's just a lot of moving
There is.
parts here to be looking at Brandon Hyde and saying, well, dude, what do you got? I mean, what are you trying to do here over cold weather, lousy weather, out to Phoenix? They'll be in a dome. They're coming home. I mean, they're putting Cade Povich out there. Memo, they don't want him pitching in the big leagues right now. They never wanted him pitching in the big leagues right now. They see Grayson Rodriguez. If they could throw Kyle Gibson out there left-handed, they would right now. Because, like, it's nice to dabble and see what he is and all that. They got to win, dude. And it's not crazy. And because every team gets in the playoffs and all of that, they're not in a position of anything else go wrong. Because I don't
Sure.
know when everything
That's fair.
goes right with the current roster they have. I mean, you're getting a little pie in the sky with 21-year-olds and Henderson coming off an injury thing and no Cowser and I Westberg's like a sure thing to me. Like the more I watch him play, the more I'm like, that dude's a ball player. That dude's gonna play 15 years in the big leagues. He may never go to the Hall of Fame, but he's never gonna go to the bench. And he's gonna play 100, 140 games, based on injuries and whatnot. He's a ball player. And Henderson, obviously, and I'm worried about injuries always for all of these
Sure.
guys. But as I sit here and look at it and say, dude, if you're going to play Laureano and Mateo in center field, and you're going to do, Urias and okay, great. You're going to be, 84 and 78 or whatever it works out to be, 76, 78, whatever. I mean, you're just going to be okay.
Yeah.
And I'm waiting around, but the pitching's not coming, dude. I mean, that's where I am. Where I am is I've watched this for all my life. The pitching's not coming. It is what it is. It's not going to get great. Corbin Burns isn't coming in. Maybe Grayson Rodriguez is Cy Young the second half of the year, but they're going to really scuffle to get through 9 innings every night with their pitching. And there are going to be nights they hit the cover off the ball. And then based on the way they profile, strikeouts, contact, maybe not running the bases as well as they have in the last couple of years, or to get guys on and manufacture runs or do the kinds of things that teams that want to score 8 and 10 runs don't want to run themselves out of innings either. I just, they're going to be a 3-run home run team, and they're going to hit 3 of them one night and kick your ass. And they're going to strike out 14 times and have 5 hits against the tough left-hander. Made him look like Warren Spahn. I had my wife Googling Warren Spahn, just so you know, Luke. I'm trying to educate my wife here in April.
Yeah, I mean, I'll hear you on that, but if it's going to be this hot and cold offensively, then they won't be very good because I mean
Wasn't that the
they've
story beginning
they've
like July 4th last year? Kind of, sort of,
I mean
kind of.
to a degree, sure. Although I just had someone on social media say their offense was putrid last year in the second half. It wasn't. They were like 13th in the majors in runs
It was
scored.
ordinary.
Right. I think
Not enough
pedestrian
to
and ordinary.
overcome five
Sure.
number 4 pitchers, I don't think.
Well,
And a
that's
bullpen that's still
and look,
questionable.
that's fair, but that's why I pointed out the fact that look, I know Cade Povich gave up 13 hits on Sunday. He also gave up 4 runs in 6 innings. Now, that's not I'm not saying that you'll take that for 30 starts and say, "Oh wow, I'm happy with the 6-run ERA." However, that's when you give up 4 runs to the opposition with this offense, generally speaking, you should still have a good chance to win. Not every single time, but a lot of times.
But you
And
think this offense is better than it was on Sunday, than the lineup?
well,
What this offense is everything firing and cows are in and splits going the
okay,
right way. Like, that's not what it is right now. That's what it is in our offseason dreams, I think, literally.
understood, but at the same time, the top 4 in their lineup, Gunnar Henderson, Adley Rutschman, Jordan Westberg, and Tyler O'Neill went 2 for 16 with 6 strikeouts. So,
You lose when that
we can
happens.
beat up Laureano and Mateo and Gary Sanchez. And look, I'm not saying I love the lineup. I certainly didn't like Mateo playing center field. But my point is they've already lost a game in Toronto 3-1. They lost the game to Boston 3-0, and I get it. Garrett Crochet pitched. I'll even throw that one to the side. Okay, Garrett Crochet could end up being the Cy Young Award winner if he stays healthy and his arm doesn't fall off, as the Red Sox are betting big that won't happen. But they lost, and then they lost a 4-1 game. I mean, right there, that's 4 games that you would look at what you allowed on the pitching side, and I'm not saying you're throwing a parade for it, but 4 games that you'd like to say, man, you'd like to get 1 or 2 of those when you're talking about the pitching being what it is. So the offense needs to be better. I've been disappointed with their defense. I mean, Friday night, that was it's kind of amateur hour a little bit. I mean, throwing to the wrong base to let Bobby Witt score from first on a single, score from first base on a single, things like that. So, it just hasn't been crisp. For me, it's not even so much that they're 4-6, because again, like I said, every team in baseball is going to lose 6 out of 10, uh, multiple times over the course of a season. So we have to keep reminding ourselves of that. But the eyeball test, the vibes, so to speak, for whatever, that's certainly not an analytical term that I'm throwing out there. It definitely it's felt choppy. It's felt not great in that regard. It's been disappointing that obviously you miss Gunnar Henderson out of the gate, and Colton Cowser goes down for 6 to 8 weeks before Gunnar even comes off the IL. So there is very much a sense of, oh my gosh, this is a repeat of second half last year when Westberg was hurt, and then Arias, who was filling in for him, gets hurt, and Mateo gets hurt, and obviously the pitching injuries that they had over the course of the whole season. But at the same time, we've said it. You and I have said it a lot, going back to the offseason, that this team's going to be built on hitting the ball to win. And if you've played 10 games and you've had 5 of those games where you've scored 2 or fewer, I'm not saying, like, let me be clear. This isn't me saying they must score 9 runs every night, but can you mix in a few more? Hey, how about scoring 4 runs, right? How about 5? It's not like an offensive explosion, but you can win 4-3. You
Yeah,
can
but
win
they're
five
also
to three.
weighting the lineup every night, lefty righty, that they're
Well,
trying to get matchups here
yeah.
early in the season, and it's not working.
Well,
That
and
that
that's, see, I'm glad you said that because now we can transition into what we saw Sunday because this was a pretty extreme example of this, but I think this is something that we've seen for a few years now. Chris Bubich, who, someone who starter pitched out of the bullpen last year for them, but long term has been a starter. Certainly, Kansas City has eyed him to be that. They've eyed up him to be that guy, and he's very much been a reverse splits guy. And when I say reverse splits, of course, that means he's actually done better. He's a left-handed pitcher. He's done better against right-handed batters as opposed to left. So I think what's interesting is we're going back to the previous era where Buck Showalter and whatever semblance of an analytics department the Orioles had then, which was quite small, and there was very much a lot of debate whether how much Buck tapped into that and how much of it was siloed and whether there was even that much communication. But Showalter was very much a reverse splits kind of manager to the point where it could be a very small sample. It could be results from 5 years earlier, between a pitcher and a hitter, that he would lean into that. I think what we have seen with Brandon Hyde, and I think fans are quick to criticize Brandon Hyde on this, but I think this is very much an organization-wide thing because of what we've known going all the way back to Moneyball and thinking back to, regardless of how the movie portrays it, but the book talks about this as well. But we know that front offices are heavily involved in lineup construction. This is not 1984 where take your pick of a manager. And Earl Weaver's a bad example because Earl used analytics much more than other managers before even knowing what that term even meant. But this isn't the days of 40 years ago where maybe there's a few managers here and there, but we know that it's collaborative. And we've seen the Orioles, and Sunday was a more extreme example, but we've seen the Orioles typically trot out lineups that don't put a whole lot into reverse split situations or even individual matchups, some hitters' individual history against that night's starting pitcher. And I think, look, to be clear, if it's a small sample, or in the case of, I think back, and I'll use an extreme example here. Let's think of Chris Davis. The last couple of years he was in the major leagues, right? Because he had big numbers against a given pitcher 6 years earlier, did that really mean anything at that point in his career? No, it didn't. So, and I'm using an extreme example to make a point here. But I think what we have seen now over the course of a few years, and people are so quick to blame it solely on Brandon Hyde. And I'm not saying Brandon Hyde is completely absolved. Let's be very clear about that. But my point is, this is a front office and a baseball ops and an analytics department that has now changed the left field dimensions at their ballpark twice in the last 4 calendar years. So you're telling me that they see the same thing that Brandon Hyde, of Brandon Hyde in terms of ignoring some reverse split matchups and things like that, where they would just let the manager continue to do that if they didn't agree with them. And my point with that is I think it's a collaborative thing. Now, let me be totally honest about this. This doesn't mean the Orioles are right about this. Maybe they should lean into that a little bit more. In fact, Sunday, one thing
Well, there is a book, and they play by it now. The way Sig
sure,
Meidel plays blackjack,
and I
that's the
think,
way they do everything. Like everything is based on odds and split. There aren't gut decisions anymore.
well, I think what we're seeing, because they do not play the reverse splits that are out there, I think they're telling you they don't put a whole lot into that. And I think they would tell you that their modeling spits out just the general platoon advantage is the most optimal way to do it if you're going to sit a regular or two, as they did on Sunday, and all of that. So
You're
again,
arguing math and science, and somewhere in there, Eric DeCosta this
you
month
know
would
where
say it's art. And part of the art is pulling pictures and stuff when a guy doesn't look
sure,
right.
sure, and look, that's again, to be clear, that doesn't mean that Brandon Hyde's just pushing a button and is, that he doesn't have any input whatsoever.
Or you're
I've
seeing
just
guys and saying, this guy, I don't like hitching this guy's swing. I don't want him in there today.
sure,
There's all of that goes in
and,
too.
and and they're trying to keep guys healthy, as we mentioned, and this is where we can peek ahead very quickly and
Mateo
look at.
catches the ball. We're probably, we're talking. I don't say they're going to win the game, but like we're not
It's not a
bitching about him
three-run inning.
playing, right?
Yeah, it's not a 3-run inning. Well, we might be because he's looked completely lost at the plate so far, just generally speaking. But also point out they've got three right-handers they're going up against in Arizona. So, again, a chance to
Load up the
get a
lefties.
couple of these right-handers in the lineup on Sunday, a couple guys a blow. I get it. It's 10 days into the season. I'm not sitting here saying that Cedric Mullins needed a day off desperately on Sunday, or maybe he did. Maybe he was dealing with a little something and they're not going to broadcast that because as I've said to you, teams they're becoming more like an NFL team as far as not being fully transparent. But my point with all of that is we've now seen this for a few years where they kind of go against the grain of what a reverse split situation would say, where, hey, this guy is a left-handed pitcher, but lefties hit him really well, which was the case with Chris Bubich on Sunday. Whereas the Orioles loaded up with right-handers, I think that would tell you their modeling and their strategy and their approach would say they value the traditional platoon advantage more so than what, and I don't want to say it's a small sample because it's not like this is a guy who's a rookie who'd never pitched before in the major leagues, but they would say that falls more under the category of statistical noise for us. Again, they might be totally wrong. Let me be clear. I'm not saying that they're right because you made mention of something in terms of the eyeball test. You talk about mojo, momentum, whatever.
Well, Buck
Part of
Showalter managed on a vibe that
No. Buck was an extreme. He was a very much reverse splits guy, but there were other times, right? I mean, there's always nuance with this. But one thing that I wanted to throw out there, where me personally, how I would kind of view Sunday and the lineup on Saturday, Jackson Holiday and Heston Kjerstad, two young left-handed hitters, both had run scoring hits against the left-handed pitcher. Now, that doesn't mean I'm eager to start them against Garrett Crochet and Tariq Skubal and some of the hardest lefties to face in all of the majors. But is there something to be said coming off of that, facing a lefty who does have reverse splits, whether you put a whole lot of stock into it or not, that maybe you trot them out there and give them a start then against the lefty? I think that's fair. Again, this is not me defending the Orioles that they're right 100%. No,
well, what
no
they
point
did
questioning
didn't
them.
work, so it's easy to second guess it.
Sure, and it didn't work. So maybe that's where you do need to take a look at it. But my point is before we just start, and when I say we, I just mean fans who are frustrated. And look, it was a frustrating weekend. That was not a good series of baseball. It hasn't been a good start to the season.
Well, they haven't won a
But
series yet.
right. But instead of putting all of that on Brandon Hyde, Mike Elias isn't sitting in his office just stewing, saying over and over, I can't believe Hyde, put another line. They would correct that. They would either have a long talk and they'd correct it, or you know what? Someone else would be managing the Baltimore Orioles at this point. Because, like I said, we've seen this too many times at this point to not think that it's more of an organizational stance that, hey, their modeling says we don't care as much about reverse splits. We're not going to care quite as much about individual history against a certain pitcher on a certain night. We want the platoon advantage. And I think you've seen the lineups reflect that. And I don't think that's solely a Brandon Hyde thing by any stretch of the imagination. Because again, why would we think that when we know, again, this team has twice changed the distance of its left field wall because of analytics and looking at how the ballpark plays and all of that. So we're really going to think that the general manager in the front office is just going to ignore the manager continuing to play lineups a certain way if they disagreed with it. I mean, I'm not buying that. I'm just not.
Luke Jones is here analyzing the analytics. The Orioles will be analyzing some late night baseball. They get going around 9:40 at night, so get the toothpicks out, get the rest in, work out some coffee, whatever you need to work out. Luke and I'll be back after it, after each of these games this week, in route to them heading home this weekend. We're going to be at Costas on Friday, by the way, for the Maryland Crab Cake Tour presented by the Maryland Lottery. Pitching, we haven't done anything on the pitching. Kramer and the bullpen and how early they're going to have to go to the bullpen on so many nights. And yeah, where are you on the pitching at this point? I'm way more on fire about the pitching than you or Shinan were a couple weeks ago, or even Viviano last week. It's not good enough. I mean, they're going to need to do something.
Well, I mean, I mean, it's not going to happen 10 days into the season. I don't think you're going to be able to make a move that's going to move the needle to that degree, short of, okay, Kyle Gibson comes
Then I
back
think they're going
and
to scuffle. I don't think they're going to get
well,
15 games over 500 like this. That's all. Even if they hit the ball well, I
I
just
mean,
don't think they're not going to get well pitched games often at all. Really, they're not.
okay. I thought you were higher on the pitching going into the season
I
than I
was, but I've
was.
watched it for 10 days now,
Oh,
and I'm
well,
worried about,
okay. Well, I'll leave it at that. Nothing in 10 days is changing my mind about how I felt. Um, Eflin has been what you would expect him to be. He's been very good. I thought Sagano pitched pretty well on Saturday. It certainly it was good to see him get into the sixth inning. He ran out of gas a little bit, but it's also his second major league start. Just because he's 35 doesn't mean I necessarily expect him to pitch like a seasoned veteran in the major leagues from day one. Now he's got to pitch well and he's got to be able to do it. But
he
I
might be
thought
their best pitcher when it's all over with. Once he figures it out, he's got
um
potential. He's got potential to be really,
solid at
confounding,
least. Yeah,
confounding to the other team.
sure.
Sure,
Yeah,
yeah.
there's a certain element to that. I mean, he's got 5 or 6 pitches. I
Dude, if they're going to be 15 games over 500, he's going to be the
Oh,
reason
so I
why,
mean, someone's going to have to
right?
pitch, right?
You know what I
I
mean?
mean,
So yeah, that's just if they're going to
sure.
be that team that's going to stack series wins, dude, wake up here. They're stacking series losses right now
Yeah.
when they win a year without losing a series, right? So like they start to stack
Well,
these
not
series
so
losses, right?
yeah, a year without being swept. They lost series, but
Okay,
yeah.
fair enough.
No, I know what you mean though. But
Yeah,
I'll say
they
this.
haven't done a lot of this stumbling in the last 2 years
Sure, no question.
because their pitching's
But
been good.
again, but again, we have to remember, Nestor, it's 6 out of 10. They have lost 6 out of 10 plenty of times over the last couple of years.
Sure.
But it is magnified on the heels of what the offseason was, and it's magnified on what the second half of last year was. So that's where I do understand fans being frustrated and a little bit of, oh, here we go again, and this isn't great. And there's no Corbin Burns, and Santander's not in the heart of the lineup. Although, as I pointed out, neither of those guys are off to particularly
Dude,
good start.
Holiday's a question mark. Rutschman's a question mark. Kowser's no longer a question mark. He's an out, right? Henderson hasn't been an in. He's just, I mean,
Well, but
all of that to me affects the pitching for what the expectation has to be because I expect a lot out of the offense. The pitching, we all to a man know, like, especially with Rodriguez being out, that it was going to be a scuffle. I think it's more of a scuffle than even that because of the bullpen issues and because of the length. And I don't think that I think back to back to back to back, they're not going to get three well pitched games in any given series the way they were getting 8 out of 10 games for a season and a half of really good pitching. Before Burns even got here, they got really good pitching 2 years ago, too. I don't think they're
yeah,
capable of that this year. I don't think these guys are capable of that. And I don't think the bullpen's better than it's been at any point. Matter of fact, I don't know. You can make the case right now that's the worst bullpen they've had over 3 years. Certainly 2 years ago with Batista was a whole different game, right? But everything about the operation's less than it's been. The offense isn't as good. The the defense still up in the air, but they're playing. I mean, I have to give them the Mateo thing. There's no part of this team that looks the way this thing looked last May when it was really firing, and most of the summer before when it was really the cake was baked. I'm looking for signs of any of this, and it's going to have to take a whole lot for me. That's all.
fair
That's all.
enough. I mean, it, we'll see. I mean, look, I had concerns about the pitching. I'll be totally honest. I think the bullpen, other than CNL Perez, has actually been fairly decent. I think now, will it hold up having to cover 4+ innings every single night the way that it's kind of trending? Then yeah, I'm in total agreement. But I think the bullpen has been at least shown positive signs, although Perez doesn't look right to me. And his velo was down, but other guys have looked better than I thought. Dominguez has actually been pretty good since his first outing of the year, and Soto is that guy that, as I've said, he's a wild card. He can be really, really good when he's right. But
Well, then you
will
got the
they be?
Bakers and guys without options
Baker's
too.
been
So
Baker's been really good.
yeah,
His stuffs look good. I have not been a Brian Baker guy the last couple of years. That said, if they're having to cover 4+ innings more often than not, then yeah, it's probably going to melt down because of what you just said. You don't really have the flexibility of optionable pieces. You don't really have a long man, although Matt Bauman has actually given them a little bit of length, even though he's not a guy that you think of as a swing man, sixth starting pitcher in the way that Suarez was projected to be in that role before landing on the IL.
Yeah,
So
he takes Suarez's innings out. Now you're
yeah,
trying
I
to
mean it's
insert
not
Gibson
ideal.
in at some point. Where's the Rodriguez thing for you? Is he going to pitch this year, next month,
I
next
mean,
year?
it's
Wait, wait,
it's
wait.
it's impossible to say right now. I mean, he's just getting to the point now where he's going to be throwing bullpen. So I think now where he's starting to throw with more a little closer to max effort rather than more touch and feel, 70%,
We're
whatever.
looking more
We'll
Memorial Day as like a barometer on
yeah,
him.
I mean, maybe a best case scenario at this point if you kind of look at where it's trending, because he at this point he'll need at least a few starts in the minor leagues, right, to kind of ramp up. And so, I mean, maybe is there a path for him to be there in mid-May? Maybe that might be the best case scenario at this point. But a lot of it's how's he going to feel? How's it going to look? I mean, I just think there's a lot of unknown. I don't want to throw dirt on the guy and say he's not going to pitch. At the same time, I'd be lying to you to say that I have the conviction that yes, he's going to come back and be totally fine, because this is the third time in 4 years now where he's dealt with at least a moderately long period of time where he's missed action.
Well, if you would
So
have told me after they got their ass kicked last year by the Royals in October that there would be no Suarez, no Rodriguez, that that they would be looking at that right now, and
yeah,
that
with no Burns obviously coming back, yeah,
and no Bradish, which they knew, and no Wells, and no, like all the guys that were already gone, Means, all the guys that were gone. It's this is the enthusiasm that they have built through new ownership, right? Angelos is dead and gone, and Elias is here, and he's the village idiot because all these guys' arms are falling off. And Brandon Hyde's the village idiot because right-handers can't get things done, and Mateo can't catch the ball in center field, whatever. I just look at the totality of all the injuries, the money spent. I mean, they spent twice as much money this year as they did last year, and the team's not as good. And I'll look at it
yeah,
right now and say the team's not as good. And all that being said, all the hope for Holiday, all the hope for Henderson to be these magnificent baseball players, I'll even hear all that. But my God, they got to pitch. And even if they're magnificent ball players, the slumpy part of baseball that I've seen this team go through because of the strikeouts and modern baseball and whatever, swinging and missing the ball is still not a good thing for my mojo. But you analytics nerds can have at it. I just it can get a little sour and get a little cold. And I don't think the pitching's ever going to be great. I think they can hit the cover off the ball for 2 weeks and win 10 of 12 that way. I'll hear all of that. I just don't think the pitching's going to be good enough to put them in a position where they are. And I'm
okay,
fascinated by the minor leagues. I'm fascinated by Rubenstein's money and their positioning and their disappointment and what a 74-year-old owner's trying to get done when he's really trying to win, as opposed to whatever the hell the last. I mean, I'm going to take him on face value. I'm writing to Katie Griggs this week. I think he wants to win. I think they want to spend money. I don't think they really know what they're doing or how to do it, but they're trying like hell. And I think it's just hard to go buy pitching this time of year. And I'm worried that there'll be 8 games under 500 Memorial Day because that is possible. I'm more worried about that at this point than I am thinking they're going to be 10 games or 12 games over and things are just going to be fine and they're going to parachute the way they did the last couple of years where they've been very good. And I think the fans here, they've been very good the last 2 years. I mean, you were born in 83, dude, right? I mean, they've been very good 2 years in a row. It's kind of hard to hold all that together, even if you spend another $80 million. And I think that's the weirdly disappointing thing of all of this. Now that we're into it, I'm looking at it a little bit and saying pitching. Ooh, that's all.
yeah. Well, I mean, I'm just a little amused because you were the one taking up for their approach at the pitching, and like you've completely changed that quickly. I mean, I was always concerned about it. Um,
Well, I just
I
see, I look at the
I hear some of
probables
what
every
you're,
3 or 4 nights, and I think
yeah,
they have the probables of a team that's a 500 team, not the probables of a team that 3 out of 5 nights is going to, come get you. They're going to come get you 1 out of 5 nights right now. We're hoping for Shigano, right? Rodriguez
hmm.
isn't coming back. None of the rest of these guys are. They're
Well,
coming.
well,
Charlie
Kramer,
Morton's not that right now. Kyle Gibson, none of these guys are that. Suarez wouldn't be that if he were in it.
well, someone, someone's got to be that. I mean, then they shouldn't. Then Mike Elias lit $28 million on fire. Then I mean, I hear what you're saying, and look, we also have to let this play out some. I mean, these guys have had 2 starts. You have to hope. I mean, Dean Kramer has been over the last 3 years has been a league average starter. I'm not saying that's anything to give him awards for or a contract extension for, but more often than not over the last 3 years, Dean Kramer has given the Orioles a solid chance to win most of the time when he goes out there and pitches, and you have to trust that he's going to do that again. You know, Friday, I mean, that how much of that was him and how much of that was the defense being lousy, and just
But
it
Dean
is.
Kramer's had a lot of nights where he's been in the fourth inning, giving up 4 runs and 7 hits, and he's 86 pitches
Okay,
in.
but every
But the
pitcher
offense
has
has
some of that.
five.
Yeah, but at
Right,
the
but
same.
they've hit a 3-run home run in the first and manufactured one in the third, and they're winning. I'm
Okay,
some nights that'll
but
be there. Some nights that'll be there. Some nights it won't be.
well, it's going to have to. That's how they're built. I mean, I hear what you're saying about Mike Elias. They've gone. This is the bed that they've chose to sleep in. They don't draft pitching. They haven't developed a whole lot. They've developed some, and like I said, I'll give them credit for some of the success stories that they have had. I'll give them a heck of a lot of credit for getting what Albert Suarez gave them last year. A guy that was 34 years old and hadn't pitched in the majors in what, 7 years? So I'm not saying it's been completely nothing. At the same time, I can't sit here and have any sympathy for an approach when you have some pitching injuries, when you haven't prioritized drafting and developing pitching. So if you're not going to draft and develop it, and you're not going to dip your toes into multi-year contracts for pitching, I mean, what the heck do you think you're going to get then? Like these guys aren't just going to like drop out of the
You're going to
sky.
buy 1-year veteran starters and cross your fingers and hope they can get you to the fifth
Then
inning
that's
every fifth
then
night, and that your offense doesn't go stone cold, and that when they get there, you're not losing 5-1.
yeah,
That's all.
okay.
And that's been a little bit of that. Luke and I are. I don't. I'm not down on them. I'm just
Oh,
trying to
look,
reset the evaluation of where they were
I
headed
just can't
18
change my
months
mind
ago
after.
and where they are
Yeah,
right now.
I guess for me, I just to me it changing your mind after 10 games, just I don't
I don't
know.
think I've changed my mind. I just think they're in an uphill battle here with the pitching.
Okay.
That's all.
No,
And I think that, I'm waiting on the
and I
hitting,
wasn't high on
but
the
I don't
pitching,
think
but
the hitting's going to be as good without Kowser. And the Santander O'Neill thing, we'll find out. I mean, they
okay.
spent a lot of money on it.
One thing you did say that I've got to push back on a little bit. I mean, you kind of made Gunnar out to be he was fourth in MVP last year and Rookie of the year before that. He needs to be he's their Ron Judge.
A hundred
I
percent.
mean, you know what I mean? Like,
He
okay,
will be the reason Dean Kramer's winning 5-3 in
sure,
the fourth inning
but I
instead
guess
of losing 4-1.
but my point, right? But I guess the point I'm trying to make, and the Gunner I'm using is, he's leading the way or needs to lead the way, and I'm not going to get too hot and bothered over the fact that he struck out 4 times on Saturday. I mean, it's the second game of the season. Didn't have missed most of spring training, right? I mean, all of that. Rafael Devers, who has a much longer track record than Gunnar Henderson, looked like Chris Davis the first week of the season, for the Red Sox before finally started getting some hits. And
Well, the thing that worries me is
but
everything you just said is that injured, young, didn't have a spring training in, might not figure it out till July, might be hitting
well,
238 all of a
if it's
sudden
July,
because
then they won't be good. I mean,
right. Well, okay.
well, but I'm just, but if we're going to lay out the worst case scenario for everything that happens, then most teams are going to be doomed then, unless you're the Dodgers, I
Well, I mean,
guess.
the Yankees lost all their pitching too, so I don't think anybody's running and hiding here. I'm just basing this on what I've seen over
Okay.
10 days in regard to their pitching and their hitting sort of meshing and matching up. And for them to get the kind of mojo they're going to need to be winning 2 out of 3 instead of losing 2 out of 3. That's
Okay.
all. That's
Okay.
all.
Then that's fine. I just, I mean, I just think it's funny because I feel like I'm sticking up for the pitching and and my point is I was more down on the pitching all off season than you were. So I don't know. It's just funny to me.
We're doing the lefty righty reverse
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
schlep
Reverse
rock.
splits. Right.
There you
Right.
go.
Exactly.
Luke Jones can be found at Baltimore Luke. We will not be nearly as argumentative. They play some damn ball
They
tonight.
got to
Hit the
win.
ball.
How about
They
win
got to
some
win.
games? How about
There you
that?
go. All right. Is
Yeah.
that good? Is that good?
Yeah.
Little
There you
Earl
go.
Weaver. I got that going for you. There will be a Liars luncheon at some point. We got Easter. We got Masters. We're going to hit the golf ball. I'm doing a little Maryland residue. Len Elmore's coming on this week. At some point, we'll get some rock and roll in here as well. And on Friday, we will be at Costas doing the the Maryland Crab Cake Tour for the very first time without Mr. Costas. I'm looking forward to seeing some friends, telling some stories. We'll have the Magic 8-Ball scratch-offs to give away. Huge list of Crab Cake Tour stops, including next week. We're going to be at the Beaumont over in Catonsville. Week after that, we're going to be up at Cooper's North doing some good stuff for Leukemia Lymphoma Society, as well as on the 30th, we're going to be at Coco's. And there's a rumor that I'm going to be doing Red Brick Station in White Marsh at some point in May too, because they got that blueberry beer that I like. They put the real blueberries in it. It makes me happy. It is springtime, I swear, and the Orioles are going to keep us up late. He's Luke. I'm Nestor. We're going to do some baseball, some football, some basketball, some hockey. Alex Ovechkin. We're doing it all. We're Baltimore Positive. Stay with us.